Hello everyone, and Happy New Year, and I hope you've had a Merry Christmas, because I think this is going out after Christmas. So yes, hope you've had a Merry Christmas, and I hope you have a Happy New Year. This is a New Year special thing that I've done for the past 2 years. I'm doing it this year as well. I think it's probably just going to become an annual thing, so I may at some point stop saying that. I don't know. But I'm going to look at my top 10 games. So my top 10 games that I've played ever. So top 10 games of all time for me as of at the end of 2015. So we're going to be looking at all the games I've ever played, not just ones this year, but of course games I've played this year are probably going to be fresher in my mind, so more likely to make it on this list. I may be splitting this into two videos, I don't know. It depends how long kind of the recording would be. So, let's get on with it, sure, shall we? Number 10, Freedom Force. So, Freedom Force is an RPG where you play as the Minuteman, the kind of erstwhile leader of the Freedom Force. It's a superhero RPG kind of thing. The Minuteman's kind of reminiscent of Captain America, very kind of, yay, America, woo, kind of thing. That in some games would really annoy me, but it's so cheesy and kind of 1960s comic-y kind of thing. Now, it's kind of similar to BioWare, the BioWare kind of RPGs, in the fact that you're going on various different missions. Although it's very linear, you don't choose which mission you do. It's you do the next one, you do the next one, you do the next one, and it's very kind of story driven in that way. You don't choose what missions you go off and do, and in what order or whatever. But as you go on, you'll recruit more and more allies and companions. You don't take them all with you in any one mission. You take 4, which is very similar to Dragon Age. And similar to Dragon Age Origins, I think the combat is that kind of pseudo turn-based kind of thing. Although I think it's more akin to Dragon Age 2 in the fact that it calculates damage from where you are. But the ranged attacks do that weird kind of, I'm going straight, oh you've moved, I'm going to follow you because I'm supposed to hit you kind of thing. Which is a kind of a graphical artifact of the kind of rule set being used by the game. The story is kind of the opening sets up that an alien spaceship crashes on Earth, and as it's crashing, throws out all kinds of canisters of something called Energy X, and that powers up various people in various ways. So they all of a sudden have superpowers based on often where they got the Energy X from. So, for example, the Minuteman is this elderly man who reaches out to a statue of a Minuteman that has been infused with Energy X, and the Energy X goes into him, and he becomes the Minuteman, and whatnot. So, I've not Let's Played this because I want to do... Part of me wants to do, I think, actually Assassin's Creed 3 first, because I think the Minuteman is connected to the the American War of Independence, but I'm not sure about that. I think, what other characters do you meet? You meet, the second character you meet, your kind of first real companion, is someone called Mentor, who is who is an alien whose job is the kind of exposition dump of explaining what's going on and what Energy X is and who your enemies are and that kind of role, which is quite good. It's quite good having the relatively ordinary character be the primary player character. Although, of course, unlike Dragon Age or Mass Effect, you don't have to use... I'm saying that like this is a BioWare RPG. It's not. It's just similar to them. You don't have to use the Minuteman in every mission, because it's kind of Justice League-y. You've got loads of different characters, loads of different abilities. Maybe you're going to use them, or maybe not. There is a sequel that I've not played, which is Freedom Force versus the Third Reich, where they travel back in time. So Freedom Force is set during the... It is set in the 60s, I think, so there are some kind of Cold War elements to it. And the beginning of Third Reich, I think, does, but then you time travel to, as one does, time travel to World War II, where you meet some British people. Hooray, British people. I've not played it, so that's kind of the limit of my knowledge of it. I'm not entirely sure where that goes, or... No, I do think I know where it comes from, but spoilers for the first game. I've not played that, I really do. If you're interested in this game, and you have kind of a modern operating system, which I think is probably Windows 7 onwards, do not get it on Steam. It doesn't work on Steam. Don't. Get a physical copy, which is weird because the physical copies work and Steam doesn't. I don't know what's wrong with that, but don't get the Steam version. Number 9. Sherlock Holmes, Crimes and Punishment. So, this is a puzzle game, as you can probably tell because it's a Sherlock Holmes game. In my view, it is much better than the Arsène Lupin or Silver Earring style games, where they're puzzle games where you'll go and do something, you'll go and solve a puzzle. And at some point, Holmes will then go, I've got a deduction, and I'm going to deduce things. And there seems to be very little input in the deductions from the player, which is rather frustrating. Surely, if you're playing a Sherlock Holmes game, it's because you enjoy the idea of puzzling things out, and not in a kind of some way random kind of point-and-click puzzle, but as in, I want to try and solve this myself, and not have Holmes go, he meant the Tower of London, and not Big Ben, because that's a red herring, because this whole game has been a massive red herring, so he can steal the crown jewels. Which is a bit weird, because that seems to come out, that seems to have no backing to it, based on other bits of evidence. So how does Holmes deduce it? And how can the player deduce it, other than the gotcha moment of going to Big Ben? I'm ranting about a different game, aren't I? So Crimes and Punishment has this really kind of interesting mechanism where you get little bits of evidence and you follow them and line them up together. So you'll pick two, and then the game will go, well, if you're right on these two things, then this is some deduction that Holmes can make. And so you're kind of going, well, does that sound like what I think happened? In which case, then these two are probably right and I can continue on this. Or do I think this is wrong? In which case, one of my previous assumptions must be wrong. In some of the cases, I think in all the cases actually, you have to be kind of almost constantly doing it. Otherwise, you will run into a wall where there's nothing else I can do apart from doing this, because they often open up new lines of investigation doing these bits of kind of deduction. I like the fact that the game will continue if you get it wrong. I'm not sure if there is... the game tells you if you got it wrong, but I think I'd prefer it if I can't really remember much about it, but I think I'd prefer it if there was. I remember thinking that I'd prefer it if you clicked on it, went through, and got to the end, and it says actually you got it wrong. Whereas in the actual one, you can check. Some of the cases are based on, the answers are based on random bits of evidence that you may not find. Or in the only case I got wrong, if memory serves, it seemed to be a bit of a glitch. I don't know if that's been fixed since I've played it. It may have done. That was the one with the train, if memory serves. It's very interesting, although the ending seems to be a plot point that doesn't really come up. And if you've watched the Let's Play or played the game, you probably understand what I'm talking about. If you don't, I may as well just say it's the Merry Men. And it's the problem with having a Let's Play with having a game like this, where you have several different cases, is it's somewhat more difficult to have an overarching story connect them, and you don't necessarily need it. I think CSI Dark Motives was another one, but there's another game that had several cases and then tried to stitch them together into one big story. And I'm not sure how well that worked in the final case, where they that was the one where they tried to stitch things together. They didn't even try that in Crimes and Punishments. They just had this kind of little interlude saying, oh, this thing we mentioned a while ago is connected to this final case. I'm not sure whether there's much point to that. But overall, I think it's really enjoyable. I think the puzzles make sense, and the deductions you're making, you're actually deducing things in the game. It's not, oh, I need to remember this thing that I've come up with, or this obvious thing. The one the other problem I have with this is there are two of the cases are directly from the books, I'm fairly sure. I think Black Peter was, and the Abbey Grange one, I think. Was it Abbey Grange? The one where she's tied up, I think, was one of them, and the bell is cut with a knife. That's the one. That's what I remember from it. But they're from the books, and I think that kind of, in a way, it takes it away from people who really enjoy the books, who will know this stuff. They know these stories, and giving them another one, giving them you can solve it yourself. It's like, I already know the solution. So, well, if they've been reading it recently, which they may have done. I'd love to see them do this again, but with new cases. That'll be very interesting to see what they do with that. Number 8. Spyro 2, The Gateway to Glimmer. Wait, what? This doesn't seem to fit, does it? So this is a game for the PlayStation. So I've allowed console games onto this list because I now have a game capture device, and I can now let's play them. So that's why this is allowed to be on the list now. It's a fun little platformer, is Spyro. The original one was very much about the platforming, and you just got to the end of the level and you advanced, and that was it. And you just said, oh, I've done the level. And you didn't actually have to do all the levels. In Spyro 2, they changed that, so you do have to do all the levels, get to the end of all the levels. And there are some items lying around, and you can do... And to get orbs, which I think, or other kind of collectibles that you do need towards the end, you have to do like little, almost kind of like little quests for people and little challenges, which I think it's much better than the first one. And I think it actually has a story. In Spyro 1, there's the big bad in the final world, and you have to get to him by getting so many things for the next balloonist, who then says, oh, thanks. And then you go on and on and on. So, I think Spyro 2 is probably the best of the three. So, I mean, there's almost that kind of rule of trilogies, is that the second one is better, isn't there? And it definitely fits here in the Spyro series. I say Spyro trilogy because I've only played one other Spyro game, and it was Enter the Dragonfly, which is probably one of the most appalling games I've ever played. Certainly one of the most disappointing, because it came from 1, 2, and 3, and 2 and 3 were brilliant games, and yet didn't do very well for it. I think Spyro 2 is a better game than 1, and because of the story and the characters. And if you're watching this, you're probably watching this because you watch my Let's Plays, and you know I love games with a good story and with good characters. And Spyro 2 has that. It's got a good villain, which is kind of lacking in Spyro 1. He's a real challenge in the end, whereas Nasty Nork in Spyro 1 is not. The characters you meet really kind of add to the story. You're there, you want to save this world from Ripto, who's the bad guy, because these are characters that interact with you, and so there is that kind of strength to it. Spyro 3 is probably not as good, and I think that's probably the villain, and the story is... the story probably makes a bit more sense as to why you're doing what you're doing, but the villain just isn't as good, I don't think. Right. But Spyro 2, so it's a platformer, so you're jumping, you're gliding, not really flying, except in a few very particular worlds, so I'm guessing that's kind of a limitation of the PlayStation. I think some of the PlayStation 2 games, you were allowed to fly pretty much anywhere, but obviously better hardware. So you're platforming around trying to get treasure, trying to get gems, because you need that to give to Moneybags, so that he will then do stuff for you, and so you can pick up skills. Spyro 1 was the only game out of the original trilogy to not have any, backtracking, whereas Spyro 2, you definitely need to do that. The first world you appear in is Glimmer, which is why in I think the PAL regions, it's Gateway to Glimmer. As you appear there, and there's one thing you can't do until you get to the second home world makes more sense. So you need to pick up that treasure. You need to talk to people, find people, and talk to people, and get orbs off them. And you need to get the talisman. So that's how you advance to the final home world to take on Ripto. And I'm kind of reiterating the story because there's not a lot mechanically to this game, although it does get frustrating sometimes. Number 7, Oblivion. So this is I really enjoyed Oblivion, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year, because I think I'll probably be able to wrap up Skyrim now. If you saw my last week, I think it was, I uploaded a video about Skyrim, which was me me getting back to where I was and not being affected by this bug. I don't know what happened, but I managed to kind of get past it. It'll be interesting to see where Skyrim comes in this. If Skyrim comes in here, gets into this list, if it knocks Oblivion off the list, that'll be an interesting thing, because I think mechanically probably Skyrim is better. Graphically, certainly it's better. Character-wise, I think I prefer Rodolph. He's got more of a character to him, whereas Julian Dracius, my character in Oblivion, didn't have as much of a character. He was just doing good and travelling around and getting distracted. While having said that, I think with Julian, I knew what I was going to do with him. So I knew I wanted to do the Knights of the Nine, so he's a bit more focused. And attached to that, the Knights of the Nine is very Arthurian, and I do really like the Arthurian legends. So it did kind of fit. It does kind of chime well with me, whereas there's less of that in Skyrim, and because I'm doing a lot of different things with Rodolph, I'm not entirely sure where things are going with him. So I don't know, we'll see, because he's currently doing Civil War, he's doing Dawn Guard, the Companions, and the main quest, and that's without... We're going to have to be heading down to the Ratway, which is where the Thieves Guild is, so we might be advancing that quest line as well. I've no idea what Rodolph is doing, but Oblivion, it's an RPG. I really do like the Elder Scrolls way of leveling, in contrast to the more standard leveling system. So the more standard leveling system would be, you get so many experience points, and then once you've hit a certain value, you then trigger your level up, and you get all your leveling, and you get all your benefits and all your skill ups and feats or whatever. Whereas Oblivion and Skyrim also has this, and I assume some of the other Elder Scrolls games have this as well, is as you use your skills, they slowly increase, and they get better, and you kind of have experience bars in all your skills, which I quite like. And then as those go up, which is slightly more natural, you're then, okay, now you qualify for this level. I'm not entirely sure. So in Skyrim you get an extra point. In Oblivion you get some skill, some kind of, some of the kind of an extra point in some of your statistics. I think out of the two, I think I prefer the Skyrim system, and so it's really going to be next year. It's going to be almost kind of the gameplay versus the story. Skyrim versus Oblivion next year. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one's better overall. Because I did limit myself with Oblivion. I didn't do the main quest. Part of me's tempted to go back and play a bit more of Oblivion as another Let's Play, and maybe with a different character and do the main quest. So we might be going back to Oblivion at some point. I don't know. I'll see how my kind of schedule fits together with what games I'm doing. But Oblivion, definitely really enjoyable, and I'm sure some people will suggest I play some of the other ones. I've actually got the Elder Scrolls, what is it? The box thing where it's got, what is it, Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, and 2 other games. I can't remember which one they are. Daggerfall and Arena? I think so. So that'll be interesting to see if people go, oh, if you really like that, you should definitely go and check this other one. I don't know. Number 6, The Last Express. So the second puzzle game on this list, I do quite enjoy puzzle games, and I think it's because often they're not just random puzzles stitched together, or at least the ones I enjoy aren't, but they're a story, story to story to story to story to story, and kind of between the blocks of story, here is a puzzle, or here are a number of puzzles. So Monkey Island does this, and The Last Express definitely does that. You're experiencing the story, and you can wander up and down the Orient Express, and you interact, and it's alive. And I think the one thing I really like about this, and I'm kind of sad it's not been done, at least as far as I've seen, in any other game like this, by which I mean a narrative puzzle game, a puzzle game with a story with a narrative, is the real-time element. So you get this kind of inexorable movement of... what on earth does that word mean? You get this kind of unstoppable movement. I think it might actually just mean unstoppable. You get this unstoppable movement of the Orient Express as it advances, and it's going on. And you need to get your stuff done. But you want to overhear this person. You want to overhear that person. You've got to wait for this person to get out. You've got to wait for the kind of the guard to get out of that store section so you can get in there, and so you can kind of look around and see what's going on in there. You've got to wait for someone to have left a certain room so that you can sneak into their room and find out what's going on. You need to go to this person's room so that you can grab this thing, and this and that, and you want to grab this, and so there's lots of things going on. It's very real time. It's very real time. Very well done. Very well done. It's real time, so you have this element of kind of tension and panic as you're kind of waiting for things to happen. I like the fact that you can rewind. So if you've messed something up, you can rewind it, and the game almost kind of just certainly saves it. Your first playthrough, you will die. You will get caught. You will mess up in many various ways. It's quite interesting just seeing what you're trying to do, because you need to do some things. Well, obviously, there's a lot of things you need to do to advance the storyline, but sometimes you can be quite interesting just to not do those and do some other things. Sometimes just looking at what your other options are. So The Last Express, it plays through, and it ends with the beginning of World War I, and it has a brilliant credit sequence. If you get the GOG version rather than the Steam version, apparently the Steam version doesn't have it, but it shows that it shows the map of Europe changing from that point, from I think from the beginning of World War One, as it slowly as it changes up till when it came out, which was 1997, and you see all these changes, all these things happening, and a lot of those things happened because of World War One, and it's this impact that just occurs. And it's really interesting. There are some interesting political comments made, I think pretty much towards the end of the game. There are a few more political comments about World War One, and I do agree with the things that were said. Go and check it out. If you enjoy puzzle games, this is a very interesting twist with that real-time aspect. So yeah, definitely go and check it out. So that's 10 to 6. So the next video will be numbers 5 to 1. Be interesting to see what games you guys think will make it into the top half of this list. So that's the first part. Thanks for watching, everyone, or listening. Thanks for watching.